Hey everyone, it is Chrissy with Pinovate. Welcome to our LAU box, our Littles Art University. In this box, we're going to be learning about Alex Janvier, his life and his impact on Canadian art. So we get to make something very similar to what he does. So in your box, if you pull everything out, what you're going to have is a round wooden board, some sandpaper, a little backing so when you're all done you can hang it up, an assortment of paint, a sponge brush and a paintbrush, and a Sharpie and a pencil. So pull all of those things out and we'll get started. Alex Janvier was born in 1935, and he actually grew up in Alberta. He loved art from when he was young and was encouraged to pursue it when he got older. He ended up attending the Alberta College of Art and Design in Calgary and had a formal training. He created his unique style of modern abstract art. So his art doesn't resemble people or objects specifically. Instead, it uses shape and color and form and lines to tell his story. His artwork is made up of his memories growing up in First Nations. They all kind of have a little bit of a hidden story to tell. Alex works with paper and canvas and even linen. His art references his Indigenous culture and history, and he even includes his own personal experience of colonization and residential schools. He did attend the Blue Quills Indian Residential School when he was younger. For over 50 years, Alex has been an activist in the Indigenous art community. He works as an artist, an educator, and even a government consultant. Alex has been celebrated and honored many times. In 2002, he received the National Aboriginal Achievement Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was made a member of the Order of Canada in 2007. He's extremely creative and has produced thousands of paintings. He continues to paint in his home and studio in Cold Lake, Alberta. We are ready to get started. So as you are working on your project and watching this video, please remember that you can pause, rewind, and fast forward as needed. You do not have to finish your project all in one sitting. If you work on a little bit one day and then more the next and then finish it off another day, that is completely fine. This is all at your own pace, so please don't feel rushed or pressure to finish it right away. So we are ready to get started. So with your piece of wood and your sandpaper, you're just going to sand around everything, make sure it's all nice and soft to the touch, and make sure that there's no slivers around the edges. Once your wood is all sanded, we're ready for our base coat. So when you are picking a side, one side might have a little mark on it from when it was cut out, so we want to make sure that we have the other side facing us. So with that, you're going to grab your white paint and your sponge brush, and we're going to give a nice layer on here just as a base, so we have a nice solid foundation for all of our colors on top. So when you're painting, you want to make sure that you're painting nice and flat. We do not want the paint to clump or it's not going to dry. The best way to do this is to do one coat the entire way around, let it dry, and then do a second coat. Okay, so I have 2 coats of paint on here and it is fully, completely dry. And optionally, you can also paint your edges if you like. That's completely up to you. Our next step, we're going to grab our pencil. So make sure that your pencil is nice and sharp for this part, okay? So Alex Janvier created a type of art called modern abstract art. And it's very, very flowy and fluid, and it doesn't actually take any shape of anything in particular. It's not a person, it's not an object, it's from his memories. So that's what I want us to try and accomplish. So I want you to pick your favorite memory, and we're going to attempt to translate that onto our board. So I'm thinking of a memory, and I'm going to do my best to try and put it on here, but there's a couple techniques I want you to think about. So rather than holding your pencil harshly, like you're writing your name, I want you to hold it very, very loosely near the end. So it's very, very loose in your hand, because that's what we're trying to recreate in his artwork, his very, very flowy movement. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to close my eyes and think of that memory and gently, somewhat draw onto my board. I want to try and recreate that, but it's going to be very, very flowy and imaginative. It's not going to look exactly how I have it in my mind, but I want it to be very abstract and lots of movement in there. Okay, so hold your pencil nice and light and think of a memory. Close your eyes when you're doing this. I want your subconscious to kind of take over, and I don't want you to think too much, okay? This is supposed to be fun, and just go with it and have lots of fun with this, okay? So close your eyes and let's go. Okay, so how did your guys's turn out? You can see on mine, I have just nice light pencil markings on here. I don't want anything too harsh and dark. It's going to be tricky to paint over those lines and tricky to erase them if they're not quite where you want them. So nice light lines, which means the lighter you hold your pencil and the lighter movements you do, the better it's going to turn out. So let's get to this point. Okay, so once I have all my lines on my board, I'm ready to paint. I have poured out just a little bit of each of my colors of paint here. It's nice because when it's on a larger space, you're able to mix colors together as well. So I have pink, blue, yellow, green, and some black. I also have white from my board earlier, so I can always add that in to make a color lighter if needed. So again, I don't want you to think too much about this. I want your imagination to kind of go along with this. Don't necessarily plan where you want every single color to go. I want you to have fun, okay? So in each one of these shapes that we happen to sketch out, we're gonna put a color, okay? Whatever color that is, it's completely up to you. If you wanted to do it all different shades of blue, you could mix in some white and do dark shades and light shades. If you wanted to do all bright colors, go right ahead. Most of his work is quite bright and vivid, so I'm gonna try and use all of these vivid colors in here. So using your small brush, we're gonna go in and paint all of those little areas. Make sure that this is not rushed, okay? For the small areas, you want to just use a very, very small amount of paint. Too much paint and it won't dry properly. Again, we want to do one coat nice and flat, let it dry, and then do a second coat. Remember, just try to do your best job in each little section. If you're having troubles going along an edge, a good trick is when you push your brush flat, it's actually going to give you a nice flat edge like you're writing with a pencil. So the edge of my brush is going to follow that edge all the way around and make it nice and sharp, which is really nice when it's a flat brush. Also, keep a cup of water beside you so you can wash your brush in between colors so you're not mixing them and making them a muddy color. Okay, so my painting is coming along. Now I'm gonna show you how to mix. some colors if that's what you'd like to do. So I would actually like to put a lighter shade of green over here. So I'm going to take some of my white from before, where I was painting my background. I'm gonna put it on my plate. I'm just gonna add a little bit of green in there, and I'm gonna make a lighter shade. I'm just gonna keep mixing until I find what I like. Almost there. And you can do this with any of the colors. If you add white to any of them, they're going to go a lighter shade, almost like a pastel. If you add a tiny smidge of black, they're gonna go slightly darker. But you can also mix colors. So if you mixed blue and yellow together, you're gonna make your own shade of green. If you wanted a tint of purple, you can mix your blue and your pink together. So you're not just limited to the paint colors that you received. So again, for mixing, I'm gonna mix a shade of like a purpley violet color. So I've added some of my blue and some of my pink in there, just a little bit of each. Mix those up till I have the nice shade that I like. A little bit more pink, there we go. When you're mixing, make sure that you mix enough to cover, especially when you're doing 2 coats. All right, so that's my first coat. I think I'm done with that. Remember, when you're painting, try not to think too much about it. Just go with the flow and have a lot of fun. Once this dries, so this is acrylic paint, it is gonna dry relatively fast, but once this dries, you're going to do a second coat on top, just to make sure that we can't see any of those brush strokes, and we want our colors to be nice and solid. So let that dry, and then go ahead and do it one more time. And also adding, you don't actually have to paint every single space. I left a couple white spaces because I liked how that looked. And you also have black in your kit as well. So if you wanted to add a couple little black sections as well, go ahead and do that. It's completely up to you. Okay, so I'm all done my painting. I have 2 coats on there, so it has more of a solid pigment. Sometimes you might actually need 3 coats for some of the colors, but I'll leave that completely up to you. So I'm gonna give you a couple tips and tricks on here as well. So if you wanna get nice and close so that the paint lines are touching, you wanna make sure that you paint one color, let it dry, and then you can go in with the second color. If both colors are wet, they're actually gonna bleed together when they touch, and it's gonna smear. So you can almost see I did it a little bit down here. So make sure that one color is dry before you color right in next to it. And to dry it, you can either take your time and just let it sit, or I like to speed things up and use a blow dryer. Also, if the shapes aren't quite working how you want, so I actually still have a pencil line in here, I'm actually just gonna go in and erase that because I prefer the other shape a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so once this is completely dry, you have 1 step left. This step is optional. If you like how it looks now, then you're all done. The next step, you're going to need your Sharpie. Okay, so if you are going to go ahead with your Sharpie, this is the very, very last step. So this is a fine tip Sharpie. It does look like it does have a thick end, but at the very, very tip, it's quite fine. So when you're using this, you want to use it vertically so that the tip is touching. You don't want to use it at an angle like you're writing with it. You want to use it quite vertically. Now with this, all we're going to do is just outline where all of our edges are. At the beginning where we did all of our pencil edges, we're just gonna go right on top and fill that in just to give it a nice solid border. Again, this is optional, but before you do this, you need to make sure that your paint is completely dry. If your paint is still wet, the Sharpie will not work. So there is my final product with all of my black outlines done. It gives it a nice crisp look to it. So, what was your memory and how did yours turn out? Does it look anything like what you thought it would? My memory was actually from when I was little, and I remember seeing a hot air balloon for the first time. It doesn't look anything like a hot air balloon, does it? No, but that's half the fun. And what's also neat is you can actually turn it any direction and it still looks beautiful. So your very last step is you can put your hook on the back, screw that in, and hang it up on your wall. Thank you so much for following along with me and learning about Alex Janvier. Hope you enjoyed your project and his art. So please follow us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And when you're done your projects, please tag us on Instagram at Pinovate and DIY Delivery. We'd love to see your work. Thanks again. Bye-bye.